Hello and thank you for joining me today on The Political Conversationalist. My name's Ben Phipps and we're beginning our series of what I'd like to call Ben's Big Ideas. And I have 3 ideas when it comes to voting. Our first one is going to be about voter ID. First, I'd like to start with this question. Have you ever voted? You really should. It's the best way to put your 2 cents into the way the government works. And if you haven't, I have good news for you. It's extremely easy. First, you have to register though, and in some states you can register online. But in almost every state, you have to have some kind of proof of citizenship, like a valid ID, birth certificate, or some other official paperwork. Some states even allow like utility bills or anything mailed to your house with your name on it saying you live at that address. And that makes a lot of sense. You have to have ID to do a lot of things, like to drive or buy video games, buy R-rated movies, buy alcohol or tobacco, even to buy spray paint or dry ice. You have to have an ID for adopting animals, to ride some amusement park rides, fishing license, hunting license, getting a piercing or a tattoo, buying a firearm. All these things require ID. But no one's really complaining about having to use your ID for those things. But they are complaining about voting and having to have an ID to vote. That really doesn't make much sense to me. But the people who are complaining about it say that it's racist and discriminatory against impoverished people. And they have a little bit of reasoning, and apparently the reasoning is that there was a study done that shows that blacks and other minorities, i.e. Hispanics and sometimes Asians, are more likely to not have proper ID than whites in the same tax bracket, and people who are impoverished are more likely to not have ID than people who are not impoverished. Now, there's nothing barring people of minorities or people of impoverished financial statuses from getting an ID. There's nothing saying you have to have a certain amount of money to get ID. There's nothing saying you have to be a certain color to get ID. There's just kind of a correlation. And I've never really met anyone over the age of 18 who, regardless of their race, didn't have an ID, because it's an integral part of life. You have to have it for so many things. And none of that is considered racist. I mean, it's just to protect people, really. Requiring it for alcohol and tobacco protects young people. Requiring it for firearm purchases protects everyone, and requiring it for voting protects democracy. After all, what's the alternative? All you need when you go to vote now, without a voter ID law, is your name and your address. And that doesn't really sound so bad, but think of it like this. Most states have a public list of voters. North Carolina does. I've linked it down below. Simply type in a name and it'll give you everyone in the state who's registered to vote with that name, as well as the city, county, and zip code of the registered voter. Now combine that with a phone book from that city, and anyone can really vote as everyone. That's a scary thought to me. People are very quick to say voter fraud doesn't happen, but how do we really know it doesn't happen? If anyone can vote as everyone and get away with it, how would we catch it? In this study I linked down below from the Wall Street Journal, 63 people from the New York City Department of Investigation attempted to fraudulently vote. Basically, they chose people who were ineligible to vote, so people who had either died or moved away, or people who were recently imprisoned so that they couldn't vote. And they impersonated these people to prove that it is extremely easy to vote as someone else. They made no attempt to look like the gender or the age of the registered voter. They just walked in, gave a name, and gave an address. Now, out of 63, 62 were allowed to vote. And the 63rd man, who was barred voting, he kind of had the misfortune that the woman checking in voters at that specific polling place was the mother of the person he was impersonating, who had just been in prison not long ago. So because he was personally recognized, he wasn't allowed to vote. However, he wasn't even reported to the Board of Elections or the police for trying to fraudulently vote. He was just turned away. Voter fraud is a much bigger problem than we know, and it's really a much bigger problem than we can know with the current laws. It isn't caught or investigated, and when it is caught, it's apparently not prosecuted. Voter ID laws help prevent this, and voter ID laws, in my opinion, definitely need to be nationwide. And of course that would come with the caveat that every single state, if not the federal government, would allow people to have IDs completely free of charge, even if it meant free birth certificates or other documentation they needed. I think it would be well worth the security of our elections, especially in times like these. Thanks for watching.